Buenos días, hermanas, colegas, pastoras, ministros de la palabra del Señor. Es un gusto poder estar con cada una de ustedes en esta mañana y presentar las buenas nuevas de nuestro Señor Jesucristo. It is good to be with you today, this morning, and it is so ironic that I am here today because 5 years ago I came as a student. I was at Point Loma, and we were here in Estes Park, Colorado, and I knew I had a call to ministry, but I also had some deep wounds and a lot of questions that accompanied me. And it was in a small group in a debrief session in one of those nights where Mary Paul led us into this time of just, what are you listening to? What are you hearing? And I said, so many people started to affirm and said, oh, you know, you'd be a great pastor and a pastora. And I went, no, thank you. And so I said out loud, oh yeah, I would be a pastor, but only if it was at a bilingual church. In the back of my head knowing, that's not a possible thing. You either do the English or you do the Spanish, but the mix of both is just not going to be plausible. And so wait for it. Guess what kind of church I am a pastor of today? Yes, I am a pastor of a beautiful bilingual church in Pasadena. And by bilingual, I mean no headsets, no printouts. It's both at the same time. And it is good stuff. It is Pentecost every Sunday. And so from the last time I was here, I've said a full-hearted yes to ministry. And hopefully, one more year, be ordained in the Church of the Nazarene. Now, I cannot tell you that the wounds and the questions that accompanied me 5 years ago have gone away. But now in hindsight, they've been a catalyst for my formation. They're now the stories that sustain me. They're the markers of God's healing. They're the altars of where God showed up, and they're scars that tell the story. And so when I'm thinking about what does it mean to reframe, I want to reframe some grit for us today, this morning. My community has always been the ones who have said, hey, you should preach. Hey, you should teach. Hey, you really enjoy this. But see, I grew up watching a mom be a pastor in the Nazarene church. And similar to the story that we just heard, there are just too many places in which the ideal of women being called into ministry, in particular women of color in ministry, the ideal is just not the reality that I saw at the front row of my Nazarene church growing up. And so I loved to preach and I loved to teach, and I was curious about scriptures and I loved stories, but I hungered to understand why things were the way they were. And so when I went to Point Loma, I went into social work. I said, I want to understand systems and people and how do we stand alongside, because let me take you to one of these moments that I can now talk about. I had graduated middle school, and my parents were church planters, and so we moved once again, and I was in a new city, in a new high school, and I had to make new friends. And I was so glad that within the first couple of weeks, I made my very first friend, and he became my best friend. I mean, it was just so fun. We were the kids that would sing in the high school aisles, that kid, that was me and my best friend. And I would hang out with him Monday through Friday, and about sophomore year in high school, I thought, there's a gap in our hangout, and it's from Saturday to Sunday. So I approached him and I said, have you ever considered going to church with me? And he said, well, I don't really do the church thing. My family, I think, did it in the back, but I really don't want to go. And I said, we have donuts. And he said, pick me up at 9. And so he hopped into our van and we went to church. And about a year of a lot of donuts intake, I saw my best friend approach the altars at our local church and said, I want to follow Jesus for the rest of my life. And I will never forget, my heart felt like it was twice its size. My eyes filled with tears and my palms got so sweaty. I had never experienced the joy of seeing someone encounter the liberating good news of Jesus Christ. And I was like, I want to do this forever. But in the very same church, in a different room, there was a different experience. Because let me explain. It was an English church that wanted to start a Spanish congregation. And so my mom was called as the senior pastor for the Spanish group. And because I was the bilingual pastor's daughter, I became the unofficial but really official translator of a lot of things. And right after this big moment of, this is it, I got tapped on the shoulder and they said, Jen, we need you. And I said, okay, here we go. Because see, this happened every Sunday. This Sunday, it happened to be that I was told, Jen, your children are breaking crayons. And I went, excuse me, first of all, I have not procreated. What do you mean by yours? And isn't it like a children behavior to just break crayons when they color? Isn't that a thing? And then I felt my mom's presence behind me. And then she asked me, ¿Qué dijo? What did they say? And that was the first moment where I had to decide, am I going to translate or am I going to interpret? Am I going to really say what they're asking or what they're really asking? And I just turned around and said, Mommy, they're a little mad that our kids are breaking crayons. And my heart started beating. And my eyes filled with tears. And my palms got sweaty. But I was angry. I was livid. And she just said, Mija, no le digas nada. Nosotros lo arreglamos. So I turned back and I said, thank you so much for letting us know. We'll take care of it. And I walked away. It wasn't until I encountered Jesus, this beautiful, wonderful, powerful name that we've been thinking about and talking about. And not just the theology of Jesus, which is beautiful and wonderful, and I gather and I sing it with you, but I encountered, the brown-skinned, border-crossing, bilingual, bicultural man from that little town in Nazareth. Yes. And so I said, I could follow that Jesus. And so Angela Duckworth, a wonderful person who has done a lot of research around grit, defines grit as perseverance and passion for long-term goals. And do we need grit in ministry, sisters? Every day. And I think our long-term goal is to see the radical love of Jesus meet individuals that are welcomed into a community that lives in a cross-cultural way and shifts things upside down in our cities. Can we say amen to that? Now, for me, grit has a name, it has a zip code, and it has a song. That name is Jesus. When I wonder if I'm really called into ministry, I echo the words that my mom would always say, said, Mija, ¿quién te llamó? Who called you? It is the one who called you that will sustain you and at times defend you. I'm going to say that again because I need to hear it. It is the God who called you, who will sustain you and defend you. And when we forget who called us, we enter into unhealthy patterns of comparison, and we start to bow down to the idols that didn't call us to preach the good news of Jesus. And so may we be faithful to the one who said, you are called to preach the good news. Grit has a zip code. Mine happens to be 91106 in the city of Pasadena. Our zip codes, the people that we are faithful to, keep us grounded and accountable. We can easily get ego shifts when we're doing this in front of people. And so my zip code keeps it honest and real. Whenever I think La Fuente Ministries is the best thing around, I go into my streets, and my streets say something real different to me. Grit, sisters, needs a zip code, and it has a song, a rehearsed response of faith. And we learned this from Jesus. In our church, we just finished preaching on the last 7 words of Jesus. And when I got to preach, it dawned on me that the first thing that Jesus says from the cross is, forgive them, for they not know what they do. And he ends saying, into your hands I commend my spirit. And those were not his words. In the first word, he was quoting Psalm 22. And in the last word, he was quoting Psalm 31. Jesus broke out in song. Just when you think musicals were not included in the biblical canon, there's a plot twist. Now, this is a song that he had heard all his life. I'm sure Mary sung at home. It was sung in the synagogue. And in the deepest moment of abandonment and pain, Jesus breaks out into a song. So when we encounter those moments that feel like straight up crucifixion, where injustice seems to prevail, when darkness is so overbearing, when our news feed are so depressing, when money don't add up, when friendships get hard and difficult, when board meetings feel like they're never going to end, when unanswered prayers stack up way too high, when DACA and dreamers are asking for a new reality, when TPS gets rescinded, when our immigration system doesn't add up, when black and brown bodies are murdered on our streets, when there are bombs blasting into Syria this morning. What is the rehearsed song of faith that will burst out and face the darkness and remind it that God is not done, that God is still at work in us? And so, sisters, that's why when we gather and sing, it's not just cute or a time filler. When we worship through song, we are rehearsing for the darkest nights of the day. When we worship, we are rehearsing for the worst board meeting. We are rehearsing for when we don't get voted into a church leadership position. And all of this gets formed in a tribe, in a community of people that are committed to do this together. For too long, I believed the myth of isolation and scarcity, that people wouldn't even get it. Oh, but sisters, we are a people of abundance. And so may we lean into abundance and remember that grit has a name, and it's Jesus. The church does not call us, thanks be to God. It is God who calls us. And so when God calls you, you go, sister. Grit has a zip code. My encouragement to you and a reminder to myself is to not lead from the pulpit, but to listen to the pews. Always. Know the topography of your city. Attend city council members, because the zip code is going to keep it real and is going to keep it honest. Do it in a tribe of people that are committed, practice vulnerability, and lean into the awkwardness of relationships in this work. Oh, but what song will you respond with when it gets really difficult? I'm going to ask you to help me sing a song I grew up with that has become my rehearsed faith song to when things just get a little too intense. And I remember of who began the work and who will then complete it. So in whatever language you know this hymn in, sing it with me. Oh Dios eterno, tu misericordia, ni una sombra de duda tendrá. Tu compasión y bondad nunca falla. Y por los siglos por siempre será. Oh, tu fidelidad. Oh, tu fidelidad. Oh, tu fidelidad. Cada momento la veo en mí. Now